Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this first webinar from the Platinum Project, Inquiry Tasks in University Mathematics Teaching and Learning. My name is Simon Goodchild. I work in the Department of Mathematical Sciences at the University of Agder, together with colleagues at Masaryk University who will handle the technical matters. My role is to keep the webinar on track and on time. It is now my pleasure to hand over to Yuri Rogovchenko, Professor of Mathematics at the University of Agder. Yuri is the leader of the Platinum Project. Yuri.
A very good afternoon from all of us. I coordinate the Platinum Project, and I will briefly introduce you to it now. The Platinum Consortium comprises 8 universities from 7 countries, spanning the European continent from west to east. Our partnership genuinely blends different cultures, traditions, and approaches to mathematics teaching and learning. We are helping each other, we are sharing our experience, and we are in continuous dialogue between the partners to improve the ways we are attempting to teach mathematics. Platinum community is continuously growing. We have nowadays partners in Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Germany, Spain, Ukraine, and we are very much open to new collaborations. So we would be very happy to meet new friends who share our interests and who will be interested in our creation of a global community of inquiry. Our ambition is to improve the teaching and learning of mathematics through inquiry approaches, which are geared towards more conceptual understanding of mathematics and its application to the solution of relevant problems, not only in the university courses, which are mathematically, basically based on mathematics or using mathematics, but also at the workplace. We hope very much that you will enjoy the webinar, and now I'm over to Simon, who will lead us further through the webinar.
Just some details. You will find that the webinar is muted for all participants. Videos are turned off and the chat function is also disabled. The webinar is being recorded along with speech-to-text captions. It will be available afterwards or from the Platinum web page, which you will find that address in the chat function now. The webinar program is also available at the link which you will find in the chat function. The program is basically in 3 blocks. There will be presentations from the Platinum Project in block 1. This will be followed by a short break, and the questions will follow the break. Then block 2, we are very pleased to have Professor Michel Artigue as our keynote presenter, and there will be a prepared response by Professor Reinhard Hockmuth from the Platinum Project. Again, this will be followed by a short break, after which there can be questions to Michel and Reinhard. And then the final block 3, there will be some presentations of inquiry-based mathematics tasks from people who've worked within the Platinum Project, and this will be followed by a panel discussion. There will be an opportunity for questions to the presenters of the inquiry tasks, but there will be no break following their presentations. You can send your questions onto the Padlet. That web address is again in the chat function for you to find. Please ensure your question is written in the column intended for that block, and please use the format that's suggested there: the question, who you would like to respond to the question, and who is asking. And we kindly ask you to leave your feedback in the last column, webinar. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Barbara Jaworski, who is Professor of Mathematics Education at Loughborough University. Barbara has researched mathematics teaching development over many years, from kindergarten to university levels. And throughout this time, she has focused on inquiry approaches. Barbara has been president of the International Group for the Psychology of Mathematics Education, and she was founding editor of the journal Mathematics Teacher Education. Barbara is the scientific leader of the Platinum Project. Over to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Simon. And good afternoon, everybody. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to inquiry in university mathematics learning and teaching. So I want to start off with some of the, shall I say, operational aims of the project. So in line with what Yuri has said to us already, we want to develop inquiry-based teaching to support students' learning of mathematics. And we particularly want our students to develop a conceptual understanding of mathematics. The word develop is going to crop up a lot because our project is a developmental project, and we're in the process of developing lots of ways of using inquiry-based education with respect to students' learning of mathematics. So in relation to that, we'd like to, or we are in the process of, designing inquiry-based tasks and teaching units and exploring their use with students. So these are tasks with which students should get involved with mathematics, exploring mathematics themselves and with each other. And as part of this engagement with inquiry-based learning and teaching, we, the lecturers or teachers in the project, want to explore and look critically at our own teaching. So we are developing our teaching as we explore it. We wish to form communities of inquiry with our colleagues in and across our partner teams. This is so important in a project which has all of these partners in it. So we work within our partner group and form our own community of inquiry there, but we form communities of inquiry across the project. And so we work very closely with each other. And in addition to all of this, we seek to design and conduct workshops in which we can introduce inquiry-based learning and teaching to other colleagues beyond the project. This could be people who are new to lecturing and want to start to know something about inquiry-based learning and teaching. Or it could mean our current colleagues who are not yet familiar with inquiry-based learning and teaching. You might ask, why are we doing all of this? And one of the reasons is what I've captured here in the title, Student Disengagement. I think it's widely acknowledged, not only in my country, the UK, but across Europe and beyond, that some students, perhaps many students, are disillusioned with the mathematics teaching that they experience, mathematics experience that they have in their university degrees in mathematics. I refer here to some work by colleagues in the UK, some research in which they have questioned and analysed mathematics students in their second year of a university degree program in mathematics, asking them about their experience of mathematics and mathematics teaching and their own learning. Been a wide response in terms of student disillusionment. And Solomon and Croft Right. What you see here, student disengagement from undergraduate mathematics in the UK is widely reported, raising basic questions as to how well qualified students who report high levels of confidence and enjoyment at school can become so disillusioned with a subject which they have actively chosen to study at university. So we are especially thinking of these students as we try to develop our approaches to teaching in inquiry-based ways. So what does it mean? What does engagement for learning through inquiry mean for our students? So rather than only memorizing facts or learning procedures, which of course it's absolutely valid for students to do, but not only that, we would like to engage students with mathematics purposefully and positively. So being engaged themselves, not only depending on the teachers who prepare for them. And we want students themselves to inquire into mathematical relationships, to ask why certain things are true. Why are these things related? Why is this a suitable formula? Why do we need to prove in this way? And we want them to explore possibilities, investigate alternatives, and overall look critically at their solutions, not just taking for granted the first thing that they get. And we want them to talk about mathematics with their peers and explore together, because we believe that while learning alone can be a very solitary process, learning with peers offers a great deal of potential support, hearing each other, learning from somebody else's explanation, and so on. And then what does it mean for the teachers? Well, we want to encourage student engagement through the kinds of tasks that we offer. So what I've just been saying are our aims for the students. Now we as teachers have to try to work to those aims. We want to include open questions, questions that don't just expect one right answer, but can actually include the student in thinking about what an answer could look like. And we want to encourage students' own questions. We want to create opportunities for student collaboration in inquiry activity. That might mean organizing group work. It might mean enabling students to form collaborative groups outside of lectures, but enabling the students to see that their collaboration with their colleagues is something that we value and want them to do. And we want to explore our own ways of engaging with the students. So in all of the three elements above, we want to explore how successful we are being in working with students. We want to try out new approaches and look critically at the outcomes. And we want to collaborate with our colleagues to innovate and explore. I noticed that I've been saying a lot of we want to do this. Well, actually, we are doing it. We're in our third year now, and we have gained a lot from the sorts of things that I've just been talking about now. So from what I've been saying so far, I introduce you to what we're calling inquiry in 3 layers. The first layer is inquiry in mathematics, whether it's in the classroom, lecture, tutorial, or workshop. Teachers working with students at the, as it were, chalk face or pen and paper face or computer-based face, but working together on mathematics. And then the second layer is about inquiry between teachers, exploring and learning about mathematics teaching. So for example, how to use inquiry-based mathematical tasks with students, how to enable students to work together in inquiry ways, and so on. And then the third layer looks critically at the other two layers, conducting research inquiry. Here, we want to gather data from what is going on in our developmental layers in order to analyze that and feed back to inform the practice that we're engaged in, but also to develop knowledge and theory from that practice, which we can share with others. So this is our three-layer inquiry approach, and we've developed a way of looking at it diagrammatically. So here we are at the center, inquiry in mathematics with students in classroom, lecture, tutorial or workshop. Surrounding that central part, we have inquiry in mathematics teaching, with teachers exploring and learning about mathematics teaching. And then surrounding them both, we have the research layer, where we analyze data to feedback and inform practice. So we can call the whole of this developmental inquiry in mathematics learning and teaching using a developmental research approach. The middle layer is developing their work with people in the middle layer, in the central layer. And the outer layer involves people developing research into the other two layers. So this is our theoretical base for the project. As Yuri has said, our project is in the EU Erasmus Plus program, where we are asked to produce what they call intellectual outputs. And so in Platinum, we have 6 intellectual outputs. And in fact, I have been talking to you about the first one of these, I01, which is inquiry-based practice in mathematics learning and teaching at university level. And there are 5 others. IO2 is about communities of inquiry among mathematics teachers. IO3 is about the design of inquiry-based tasks in mathematical topics. IO4 is about teacher and teaching development. IO5 is about modeling, that is building on the tasks that are developed in IO3 to engage students with inquiry-based tasks which take them into the realms of science, engineering, finance, and the wider world of work. And then finally, IO6 is evaluation, where we look back to our practice and we find ways of evaluating it, justifying what we are learning and have learned, and seeking to still continue to develop on that. So we have 6 intellectual outputs. We set off to link them to each other, and perhaps unsurprisingly, found that they are all interlinked. We are in the process at the moment of preparing a book which will relate to all of those intellectual outputs and also produce case studies from each of the partners. And I now ask my colleagues to tell you more about the other IOs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. And we hope you will join us after the break to answer questions that will come from the audience. I have been reminded to tell you that the subtitles or closed captions is available to everyone. You will find the button to switch this on your screens if you want it. It is the CC in the bottom row of your screen. And now I will introduce as one group the coordinators of the Platinum's intellectual outputs. And they will follow in sequence, one straight after the other. We start with Reinhard Hockmuth from Leibniz University in Hanover, followed by André Heck from University of Amsterdam, Adrian Resto from Complutense University of Madrid, then Yuri Rogovchenko from University of Agda, Marianka Kravlova from Masaryk University, and then finally Lukasz Masylko. They will continue immediately, one after the other, with just a short introduction from me. Thank you. And Reinhard, off you go.
Okay, now it works. Nice afternoon to everybody. My task is to speak a little bit about intellectual output 2, about building communities of inquiry among mathematics teachers. The Platinum project brings together mathematicians, mathematics lecturers, and mathematics educators teaching university-level mathematics to students of mathematics, science, engineering, economics, and other disciplines. Developing a practice of engaging in inquiry-based mathematics is not a simple matter. It requires a change not only in didactic and pedagogic approaches, but also in the ways we think about mathematics and students' engagement with mathematics. It requires a lived engagement, a culture change. But in most of our university environments, traditional approaches to mathematics teaching are still the norm. So the overall objective of IO2 is to develop local university mathematics lectures communities of inquiry in this situation. The 8 partners has formed at their local places inquiry communities of learning practitioners who share experiences and issues to support each other. They have brought new approaches into their work with students, designed new tasks, redeveloped traditional teaching units, and tracked their own learning during this time. The ideas of IBME were diverse and the local conditions of the partners were very different. Diversity has been made fruitful in the exchange at jointly conducted workshops in the sense of forming a Platinum community of inquiry, as you will also see in the next commentaries. Each community, local community, agrees on a systematic developmental process. They define goals, plan a strategy for design and implementation of teaching practices, a collection of relevant data for feedback, discussion and reflection on this feedback, and a redesign of the practices as a consequence of it. An important area for development of practice at each place was the use of internet and the digital technologies. It encourages and supports the learning of mathematics in several instances. As Barbara already mentioned, our learning processes have been captured through so-called case studies, which are shareable with others. These case studies are the basis for our Platinum book, presenting each of the cases as an example and provide an overview, theoretical and practical, to communicate key aspects of the inquiry approaches and its implementation in practice. The book will also trace challenges and also the case studies, tensions, contradiction and dilemmas we have faced. It's a pleasure to announce the publication of the Platinum book in the end of 2021. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Reinhard. And now we go straight to André Heck.
Yes. Thank you. At all levels in the three-layer model of inquiry presented by Barbara, tasks and task design are key ingredients of the inquiry. Teacher professionalization, intellectual output 4, as you will see, also needs resources for courses and workshops. So it comes to no surprise that the Platinum Project has a big intellectual output on the development of inquiry-based tasks by local communities of inquiry. This presentation is a bird's eye view of the work done in IO3. So what has been done? First and for all, teaching units have been created. Not all kinds of units, but teaching units that promote conceptual learning through an inquiry approach, and that blend many digital and other resources to support lecturers. These units have been used in regular teaching, and data have been collected about their use. Attention has been given to accessibility of tasks for students with special needs. And the goal was to deliver not just a set of tasks, but to deliver documented packages of tasks and teaching units for student inquiry in mathematics. These packages can be used beyond the Platinum Project and are presented to a wider audience in webinars like this one and in the Platinum book. Now, for whom did we do this besides ourselves? Who might benefit? Students and teachers in regular courses that would like to work with materials that foster a good balance between procedural and conceptual learning of mathematics. Teachers may use Platinum units in class, adjust them to their students, or get inspired and create their own inquiry-based tasks. Teacher trainers benefit from the documented packages of tasks for their courses and workshops. It's lesson material. Let me summarize how most local communities of inquiry worked. Well, they designed student inquiry that they thought would work for their students. They developed as a team tasks for the envisioned student inquiry, used these tasks in practice, evaluated and reflected on these tasks, documented outcomes at all changes in the form of narratives, recordings or notes of meetings, student questionnaires, interviews with students, etc., and informed and collaborated with others, with partners. And through their work, each Platinum partner contributed to the final output of IO3, namely a repository of documented teaching units for student inquiry. Now, documentation may seem not feasible outside a project like Platinum for university lecturers with already a heavy workload, but let me finish with a small example in which a lecturer adapted an existing exercise to make it more inquiry-oriented. In this case, documentation just consists of describing the difficulties that students had with the original task, posing an improvement of the task, and briefly underpinning the design of the new task. This type of short documentation of task design seems doable. And last words, I hope that this example also serves as an appetizer for the presentation of inquiry-based tasks and teaching units in the third block of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. And we go straight on to Adrian Riesco.
Thank you, Simon, and good evening, everyone. I'm in charge of presenting the intellectual output 4, which is methods and materials for professional development of lecturers. And of course, if you want others to use inquiry-based learning, you need to form teachers so they understand it and can use it. So we have two main objectives: to elaborate methods and materials for professional development of university lecturers, and to organize a workshop at an international summer school in Spain to test how these methods and these materials work. So in order to achieve these objectives, we have 4 actions we want to apply. The first one is to know each other better, okay, because we need to understand how other partners are proposing their lecturer training courses. And once this is achieved, then we organize local level workshops at Norway, Germany, and Spain on the design, development, and implementation of professional development activities. Then, as action 3, we need to identify the commonalities and differences that arise in these 3 workshops and in the materials that we developed. And this is important because we have different backgrounds, and also students have different backgrounds, even different secondary education, and we are working at different levels, maybe bachelor degree or master degree. So we need to understand the difference to be able to generalize and give an appropriate product. And finally, we want to create a toolbox of methods, materials, and practical tips for professional development of lecturers. Here we have a couple of challenges. The first one is to integrate this intellectual output with all others, because as we have discussed, all intellectual outputs are interconnected. So we need the communities of inquiry we have seen, we need the courses that have been developed, we need to understand how to evaluate, and the whole needs to be complete in order to have a good product. And then we need to integrate the different cultures and different ways to teach in the different partners. Then from the experience in these local workshops, we identified some milestones and some challenges for addressing an international workshop. And we emphasize 2 questions. The first one is, what do we mean by an inquiry-based task? And of course, this is basic for teachers to understand in order to apply inquiry-based learning. And second, how can I support teachers' growth on inquiry-based testing approach? We need to identify the most appropriate professional development strategies for all of us. So in this case, it seems pertinent to pay attention to the conceptual model of the inquiry process and to see inquiry as having both epistemological and strategic aspects. So finally, the aspect of interest is remember the 3-layer model, where in the intermediate layer, but they are all interconnected, identify the different points of view, the generic, the specific, the common sense and the intuition versus the scientific approaches, and to find the aspect of mathematical thinking and how to accompany this learning with appropriate didactical elements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian. And now we go straight on to Yuri Rogovchenko from University of Agder.
Thank you very much, Simon. It's me again, and this time I will talk not about the project in general, but about the intellectual output number 5, where we talk about mathematical modeling and design of teaching resources from real-world problems in business, industry, and society. While we are facing this little technical difficulty, I will say a few words about the output. So it's the output which is very much in line with the third one, where just inquiry-based tasks are being designed. But the peculiar feature of this output is that it has been inspired by the work done in the US by the PICMath program, which was led by Professor Michael Dorf, who is currently the president of the Mathematical Association of America, and he is a good friend of Masaryk and Platinum. So we got inspirational ideas there, and the main idea is actually very simple. We wish to connect business, industry, society, and academia. It sounds simple, but apparently it's not that easy to practically achieve. So we promote in this output the use of mathematics as a powerful tool for inquiry into applied problems. This output contributes to the establishment and strengthening of educational partnerships between the academia and the industry and also society, because we also happily collaborate with any governmental organization and local community who are interested in some offer of modeling tasks for students. And it's very important that during those work in those outputs, students develop very much requested by the employers communication and teamwork skills. So what we were trying to do, we were approaching public and private partners, both business and governmental organizations. We were looking for problems, real world problems, which could be identified as tasks transferable into students' assignment. And they should, of course, bring students into the kingdom of open-ended mathematical modeling. And also we use the feedback from enterprises and businesses and our graduates about desired mathematical competence, which is what the employers look after. They have two different types of tasks for students in different programs. So basically, they are grouped into blocks. The first block is for students in mathematics, physics, natural sciences, engineering, who have better mathematical knowledge and computational skills. And they are really better prepared for facing challenges which real modeling poses. So in this case, we try to make this contact between students and industry through the tasks which are offered. And students benefit both by developing their mathematical computational skills, and also they have possibility to show their skills to the potential employer. So this is one important phase of this activity. The second block is actually about realistic mathematical modeling tasks. And here we target students from social sciences, economics, business management, and other degrees who need still analytical skills, who need critical thinking, but their mathematical knowledge may not be sufficient for advancing the real problems as in the first block. So we also very much encourage students' participation in the development of those modeling tasks. And we like to have them as partners, suggesting the tasks they would like to engage with. The last but not least thing is the student business incubator, which we have at the Ukrainian partner. And this business incubator is actually where all those ideas are melted. It's focused on inquiry and creativity. And we have here connection between business, society, academia. We select carefully mentors. We train both mentors and students. And we look for solutions to modeling tasks. And this definitely impacts students' employability and their mathematical competencies. Thank you.
And thank you, Yuri. and we move on immediately to Marienka Kralova from Masaryk University.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Simon, for introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Intellectual Output 6. This is an output on evaluation. We have heard a lot so far about inquiry-based education, teaching. We all are trying hard to implement this approach into our teaching. We are developing tasks and teaching units and adjusting our curricula to this inquiry-based approach. And we need to look back. As with any activity, innovating teaching, we need to have some evaluation tools, some guides for what to evaluate, how to evaluate that. So for that reason, IO6 in this Intellectual Output 6 is part of our Platinum project. At the beginning of the project, we supposed that to fulfill this intellectual output, we will work in 3 phases. The first phase should set up detailed guidelines for the assessment and evaluation of inquiry-based approach. The second phase should collect instruments for evaluation of inquiry-based tasks, instruments which we currently use in our universities. And we wish to end up with cross-case study analysis of the collected cases. However, at the beginning, we supposed we will continue step by step from one phase to another one, but they interrelate, and both first and second phase are underway simultaneously. So it's not easy to separate it, and it iterates. Speaking about practical guidelines, we were discussing what should these guidelines, what they should cover, what is the main objective these tools and evaluation should cover. And of course, the principle, the vital point is that all lecturers using inquiry-based approach, they need to monitor both their own progress in mastering inquiry-based learning methods. And of course, we focus a lot, or any teacher using IB approach needs to evaluate somehow also students' engagement with this, we believe, more efficient learning approaches. So the guidelines should focus mainly on these 2, let's say, perspectives, but we also need to take into account the design of tasks, the appropriate testing approach related to these tasks and curricula, and also available and appropriate instruments that enable us to see what this new novel approach is bringing and which benefits it brings. Another point is that we have some specific setting in our universities, and also the curricula are different. So the guidelines should also examine different measurement tools which can be used within different environments in our institutions, because there is a high variety among them. At this moment, we are somewhere in the middle of cross-case analysis. We have so far collected some tools, we have developed some guidelines, and now we are on the verge of applying this cross-case analysis, which should follow criteria like different cultural and social context, which is important because within this project we realized that our 7 countries, 8 universities, we all face different difficulties and challenges we have different objectives. So this should be covered. And also the concepts of inquiry-based approach, such as evaluation of conceptual learning and teaching mathematics, which is the core. Also monitoring students' engagement, which I find highly beneficial and important to focus on, because this is what Barbara at the beginning said, this is the reason why we all run this inquiry-based education to engage students more in mathematics. And what is vital for the process at universities, which should transfer from traditional approach, or should we wish they should transform from the traditional procedural approach to this inquiry-based approach. So to allow this transition in the institution is possible only when there exists some community of inquiry, and the reflection should be also covered by the criteria of cross-case analysis, and of course professional development of teachers. At this moment, we have we have done a lot for this, and we believe that our experience is transferable to other institutions and to other partners. And what we find we all have in common, we build it within this time strong community of inquiry, which I find essential for the idea, for the ability to spread this idea to other institutions, to create your own communities of inquiry and this background. And this needs time. So thank you for your attention. And I hope our community will be larger after our workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianka. And straight on to Lukasz Masilko, also from Masaryk University.
So thank you, Simon. I will talk a bit about students with identified needs, which is one of the three most relevant topics of the Platinum project. Besides the other two topics, with pedagogy and didactics, and ICT, new technologies, and digital competencies. Within our project, we focus on students whose ability to learn is affected by health condition or specific learning difference, such as dyslexia or ADHD and so on. Sorry. Okay. We are two institutions who focus on this topic. I'm from Masaryk University and from the Teresias Support Center for Students with Special Needs. And we are partners to students and teachers regarding the accessibility of all the study programs in our university. We collaborate on the project with Claire Trott, who is the deputy of Eureka Center for Mathematical Confidence. But all of the partners have some experience teaching students with identified needs. Based on the survey, which we did during the first year of the project, our colleagues confirmed that they receive information on students with special needs in the beginning of the semester. But of course, in that time, they finished the development of the courses. So it is necessary to offer them some technology to respect the needs of the students with special needs in advance. Universal design is the methodological framework introduced in 1985, and it is based on, I will cite, the design of products and environments that can be used by everyone in the greatest possible extension without the need for adaptations or special aids. Later on, another methodologies relating to universal design were developed. For example, universal design for learning, which is more associated with education. And, sorry, I do not have the control over my presentation. And two guidelines with accessibility recommendations concerning the digital content that are administered by World Wide Web Consortium. Following the universal design recommendations during the process of course development is an inclusive and much more effective way when one wants to respect special needs of students and not make individual adjustments on demand during the course run-up. Universal design is not a help only for students with identified needs, but for all the participants. As an example, I can tell something about our closed captions, which you have available during our webinar. This is the help not only for students with hearing impairment, but it can also help not English native speakers or simply people who cannot follow audio channel for different reasons. Within the Platinum project, we consider accessibility during many activities. We are in contact with local communities of inquiry and try to influence their teaching style or methods of their members with regard to students with special needs. We also collaborate on designing inquiry-based teaching units, give authors universal design recommendations, or propose or suggest some individual adjustments in order to ensure active participation of all the students with identified needs. That's all for me. Thank you for the attention, and I give the word to Simon.
Thank you very much, Lukáš. And we now take a short break and recommence at exactly on the hour. During the break, I hope you will be sending questions to the presenters we've had during this first block: Barbara, Reinhardt, Andrei, Adrian, Yuri, Marienka, and Lukáš. At the moment, there are no questions that have arrived for these presenters, which means that I will have to pose my own very difficult questions, and I think they would much prefer that you had they had questions from the audience at large rather than mine. So please think about posing questions now, and we'll continue at, on the hour. So for a few minutes, farewell. Welcome back to the Platinum webinar. And I wonder if I could ask the presenters from block 1 to switch their cameras and microphones on so that we can hear your responses to questions which have come in. The first question is to Andrei and Adrian. And I apologize to Adrian because I think you came into this rather quickly today. But one of the difficulties that I have experienced as a teacher has always been how to use someone else's designed task. How do you communicate fully how a task and how it might be modified to a particular teacher's personal pedagogic approach, because we don't all teach in the same way? Andrei, you.
Yes, shall I start?
Please.
I think I stressed the word documentation in IO3 of the designed tasks. And I think most of the information for you as a teacher comes not only from the task themselves, but also from the description, the information that goes along with the design task. And that description, although we have not used a fixed template in the project, contains information about a short description of the unit, how it has been used in an organization, what kind of students, what are the learning objectives, but especially, of course, what is the IBME, the inquiry-based mathematics education characteristics, and what kind of student inquiry is supported by the task, what kind of inquiry abilities are addressed, what kind of tools are used, what is the mathematical content in the end, maybe how it is used in a certain learning path, because that can inspire you as well, or you can reflect on it, how it compares with your own learning path, and the experiences that have been made with the task already. So I think that are the kind of support that we can give teachers with the tasks.
Thank you. Does your documentation include points where the task might be adapted or varied?
Yes, because we have also suggested that people who write the documentation also gives kind of ideas how it might be used differently, and what then has to be done in terms of maybe the pre-knowledge requirements of students and things like that.
Thank
So
you.
there is room for that as well.
Thank you. Adrian, will you add anything to Andrei's response?
Well, I would like to emphasize the experience part, because you need experience teaching, but also with inquiry-based teaching, right? So if you have tried some activities, some of them failed probably. So when you read a task prepared by others, you know that some activities will work in your context, but some others will not probably. So this experience is, I think, the most important part here.
Thank you. And now I'd like a volunteer for the next question. Perhaps Yuri and Barbara might think about the response first. Question, I read it. I understand that in Platinum, there are both mathematicians and experts in mathematics education. How did the collaboration happen and how does it work? Barbara, would you like to start off?
This is a nice question, because actually, I think this has been at the forefront, sorry, excuse me, at the forefront of our partnership from the very beginning. From the very early days of trying to decide what this project could look at, we had both mathematicians and mathematics educators. And I think Yuri won't mind if I say that Yuri is one of our mathematicians and that I am one of our mathematics educators. And we both bring important knowledge and skill to the partnership. And if we look across our 8 universities, we can see that some university partner groups include mainly mathematicians. We can see that some others include mainly mathematics educators, and some others have both. And so when we have our workshops, where until COVID stopped it, we came together and all contributed to the program of work, then we benefited from those very important differences in knowledge and skill. And what I think is very important about this is that we've learned from each other, because we have our own disciplinary backgrounds and perhaps some degree of understanding of the others. But through the project, I believe that we do come to much better understandings of the position of the other group. So I would like to say that the project has been extremely fruitful for ourselves in bringing us together and understanding others. But I think it's also important when we start working together on things like inquiry-based tasks or teaching units or workshops for new lecturers and so on, because in those groups we are going to get again a spectrum of experience, and we want to be able to prepare our input, our materials, our questions to be relevant to both areas. So I think that the project has been so far very helpful in addressing that.
Thank you, Barbara. And Yuri, would you like to add?
Thank you, Simon. So I would say that I actually have in my wardrobe 3 hats. I have the hat of coordinator who has to mediate between mathematicians and educators. I have a hat of mathematician, but I also recently got a hat of mathematics educator because I was engaging more and more in what my colleagues at the University of Agder are doing, and also in the project work with Platinum. So I started publishing in mathematics education too, and it's my ambition to prove that Barbara next time could call me also mathematics education person as well as mathematician. So I would say that it is really about a dialogue. When we I just started this presentation by saying that we have a very, very unique mixture of different approaches to teaching mathematics, different experiences in teaching mathematics. And we are always talking and helping. So we have the community where indeed we had like a little bit of dispersion, or maybe too much dispersion in the very beginning, which after 3 learning and training activities became really a community of people who realized what they have as common goals. And we were like educating ourselves in those activities. And we learned how to be inquirers ourselves. And now we bring it to our classrooms. I'm not talking about mathematics educators who were really there already in the very beginning, but I'm talking more about mathematicians like me and my colleagues. And apparently the project is aimed to really touch and approach and encourage the mathematician to try something like this, maybe on a smaller scale, maybe just once in the classroom, but really get engaged with this activity because it's exciting. Anyway, come to class to teach. Why not to try something interesting? And inquiry is the way to make the students learning actively and to test it for your own classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuri.
Simon?
Yes.
Simon,
Yes.
I would like to add to this from the project point of view, that this collaboration between mathematics educators and mathematicians also makes the writing of the Platinum book an interesting enterprise, because it will in this way contain both the research perspectives and the perspectives of practitioners who give an account of how they felt within the communities of inquiries and how their case studies went in practice.
Thank you for adding that, Andre. Right, another question we have here, and I will ask Maria and Reinhard particularly to pay attention, because I'd like you to start off your answers to this question. It is very important to teach complex ideas after students get fully confident in theory and are familiar with basic terms, definitions, and theorems. How difficult is it? How difficult it is to make a perfect timing for the inquiry-based learning teaching to take part in education, in education. So this is a question about the, overcoming this difficulty of timing and getting the time to do it, making sure that things happen at the right time. Reinhard, would you like to start off? He's run away.
Oh, so
well, okay, Maria, you're there. Okay, let's see what you have to say.
okay, I can just say that it's tough. That's true. It's tough because the traditional curricula are covering some topics, and if you want to implement inquiry-based learning and can't change the curriculum, which is set by the institution, then it's really it's a challenge. And at least I can describe my experience. I can adjust slightly the context, content of the lecture and seminar. So I think what is really the necessary to leave there, and what is just tradition. We are used to teach it from one year to another one as a habit. And sometimes and also this during this COVID period, we find out when we need to think about our teaching, what can be skipped, what can be replaced, which simulations on the internet can convey the knowledge when you don't see the students in front of you personally. So really also this COVID period shows us that we can rethink our curriculum, what is really necessary to leave there and what can be skipped. And I have done or overgone this process within these 2.5 years of Platinum, and realized that there are really sometimes things which are used to use, but now I realize that nothing happens if I skip it and replace it with something different, which is based on inquiring. The only consequence which is more challenging for me is that you need also to change the exam, because within exam you can't use the tasks and the problems which previously, because this inquiry-based tasks have different nature. And at least I cope with it, or I fix it in that way that I replaced one task from the list of the exam tasks from previous years with one task which is really opened and different from this procedural approach. And it still allows students who like that procedural approach to pass, but good marks can get only those students who are a bit more opened to this inquiry approach. So it's in a process. I can't say it works perfectly, but I started to apply it and I see benefits. At least part of students are engaged more. So the timing it's a challenge. I can't say more.
Okay.
To that.
Thank you, Maria. And timing being a challenge, I'm now going to move on without inviting Reinhard to react. The questions will be responded to you'll find responses on the Platinum website eventually for those questions that have been posed but not addressed. But now we move on to the next part of our program, and I have the pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Michelle Artigue, who is Professor Emerita at Université Paris Diderot. Michelle was President of the International Commission on Mathematical Instruction. She has a long and distinguished career in research and development relating to inquiry-based mathematics education at university. Michelle has been engaged in European projects, Fibonacci and Primus. And amongst many honours, Michelle was awarded the Felix Klein Medal in 2013 for her substantial research contributions and lifetime academic achievements in mathematics education. It is my honour to introduce Michelle. Over to you, Michelle.
I try to share my screen. Yeah. Okay. So good afternoon to everyone, and thank you very much, Simon, for this kind presentation. And as was agreed with Yuri and Simon, in this presentation, I will try to share some lessons I have learned from the European projects I have been involved in, and focusing on possible resonances with Platinum. Indeed, in the last decade, I have been involved in 6 European projects as a scientific advisor. First, Fibonacci and Primas, then ASISMI and MASIL, the 4 projects being from the framework program 7, and then MASDIV and MOST, and currently MOST were 2 Erasmus Plus projects. In fact, the 4 projects in green on the screen were led by Katia Mas from Freiburg University, which has introduced some continuity in terms of leadership and also in terms of partners. And this has allowed to capitalize more on ideas, on resources along these projects. But each project has its own focus. And for instance, Masaryk has a focus, vocational IBL for vocational education and for reinforcing the relationship with the world of work, MASDIV for addressing fundamental values and cultural diversity, and MOS is today focused on open schooling and relationship between school and communities. So these are different projects. I will address I have chosen to address 3 different points and challenges related to 3 different points. The first one is conceptualization of IBL or IBE, as you say. From the beginning of Fibonacci and Primas project, I discovered that the words IBL, the expression IBL, IBE were not given the same meaning by all partners. There were differences among disciplines, but also differences between partners for the same disciplines. And this was the case for mathematics. So in these 2 first projects, substantial work was needed for reaching views consensual enough for supporting the collaborative work to be carried out. And this led to different outcomes in Fibonacci and Primas. I do not enter into detail. I will just give the Primas definition of IBL. As you can see here, it is organized around 5 clusters: valued outcomes, classroom culture, teacher role, what students do, type of question. I will say that the points raised are very important points. In my opinion, there is something which is a bit missing in this definition is the epistemology of the disciplines. I expressed in meetings this my concern for this point, and eventually it was added in type of question and or scientifically relevant. But I could not obtain that just and scientific relevant. So it is not too much. With Morten Blomage, we had the opportunity to reflect more on this issue of conceptualization of IBL. And we started from the idea with the claim that theoretical approaches developed in mathematics education since the 70s are all based on views of learning IBL compatible, even if the term IBL that was not used because it has been more recently introduced and coming from science education. And there is also the fact that these approaches induce different visions of IBL, sharing a number of premises, but weighting them differently. So we consider different approach with Morten, from realistic mathematics education and the theory of didactic situation, old approaches developed from the 70s, to more recent ones such as dialogical and critical approaches of increasing influence in math education. And we identified 10 key concerns with different hierarchies of priority according to these approaches. I have listed here the 10 key concerns. You see that they are quite diverse, and that many of these have been quoted even in the previous presentation today. The authenticity of questions, the epistemological relevance of the question, the compatibility with the curriculum, the extra mathematical question and the modeling dimension of the inquiry process, the experimental dimension of mathematics, the development of more transversal competencies and inquiry habits of mind, the autonomy and responsibility given to students, the role of the teacher and the dialogic interaction between teacher and students, the collaborative dimension of the inquiry process, and also the critical and democratic dimension of IBMA, which was present since the seminal work by John Dewey in the US. And I had the opportunity to reflect a bit more on this issue when organizing a panel on IBL at the Vargas 100 conference organized in Budapest in 2019 in order to celebrate the centenary of the birthday of Tamás Varga. And the panel was entitled Inquiry-Based Mathematics Education and the Development of Learning Trajectories. And we had contribution from Katia Mas with experience of European project, for Mariana Bosch, representing the perspective of the anthropological theory of the didactic, from Michael Dorman, representing RMA, and also from Peter Jouas, representing the Lajos-Posa method. Perhaps you don't know it. It's a method which is directly inspired by the idea of complex mathematics education developed by Tamás Varga in Hungary. And there was also Ladislav Vaz, a philosopher and epistemologist. Was representing genetic constructivism, a form of inquiry-based education, which has been developed decades ago by Vít and Milan Ejny in the Czechoslovakia at the time, and is used in Czech and Slovak regions. And it is sure that the work we have developed preparing this panel confirms the existence of an irreducible diversity of perspectives on inquiry-based mathematics education, and that this diversity leads to substantially different didactic construction in terms of learning trajectory, teaching sequences, and so on. So the question emerged, is diversity an obstacle or a richness? How to cope with this diversity? And I will express my personal position. I think it is influenced by my long-term engagement in the networking of theories. The idea that diversity, when it goes along with shared values, can be seen as a richness and not as an obstacle. And this is expressed in the conclusion of the article associated with the panel that we wrote together, when we write, developing the level of consensus necessary for making international collaboration possible and for capitalizing on the knowledge produced through different approaches is not an easy task. However, understanding better our similarities and differences, how these influence our didactic strategies and realization, with what consequences on understanding how we can mutually enrich from the existing diversity is something very important, and is important in European project, of course. The second point I would like to address is the dimension of resources. As all these projects, and Platinum we have seen is the same, in this project, the production of resources for teaching and teacher professional development, their experimentation in different contexts is a key component of this project. And if I reflect on the project I have been involved in, we have created new resources, but also we have built on existing resources. For instance, in many projects, those from the Czech Center for Mathematical Education at the University of Nottingham or from the Freudenthal Institute, because they have developed a lot of resources for primary and secondary education, IBL compatible, and they were members of the project. And also we have recycled, adapted resources from one project to the next one. I just show you the example of the MathDiff case, one of the last projects. But it is rather representative. So you see, for instance, we have a website And in this website, we have a lot of different resources, which are present in a rather attractive way, I would say. And we can select this through a search engine. We have also generally something which is more in form of a booklets. We present the philosophy of the project, the big ideas beyond the tasks developed, give example of this task, and also various ways in which these tasks can be implemented in different contexts. And also we have generally something for teacher professional development. Is you see the MassDiv module, a module thought for about 14 hours, and which is structured around 3 modules. For the first one for addressing IBL, for addressing achievement diversity, students' differential achievements. The second regarding context, and the third regarding focusing on IBL in order to address cultural diversity, which was so important in this project. When I think about resource, for me, one challenge is the main challenge is the challenge of locality. I don't know if it is the exact word, and it takes different forms, and a form of size first, because in this project for primary and secondary education, partners are submitted to very strong institutional conditions and constraints. Also, they want to produce resources that can be used and compatible with the diversity of curricular organization in 10, 12 countries. And these tend to lead to the production of what I would call small size resources, which can be implemented in 1 hour session or at most a few sessions. But in return, this kind of more small size resource we have seen tend to induce and favor, make possible an episodic and anecdotal use of inquiry practices without impact on the dominant mathematical and didactic or praxeologies. And this is also reinforced by assessment modes, because in many of these projects we have observed that there is at the same time in the country a general curricular discourse promoting IBL values, and at the same time assessment modes are not changed at all. And this makes the situation very complex and difficult for the teachers. The second point I would like to dimension of locality I would like to comment on is that of context. Because there is a necessary adaptation of resource when moving from one context to another one, and also when moving from the position of author to the position of user. And what I have gained from this participation to project is that the idea, the conviction that adaptation might be anticipated and taken into account in the design of the resource itself, in their description, in the organization of their experimentation by partner teams, and in wider dissemination process if these are envisaged. And also, I find very important the fact of comparing the uses of a particular resource in different contexts to understand what is robust in a resource, what is less, how it can be adapted without losing its epistemic essence or not. And for this, I was inspired, I would say, by the system of cross-experimentation we developed in another European project, not on IBL, the REMAT project, which was really very productive. I would like also to add that we have increasing theoretical resources. for addressing the challenge of locality in terms of context, with the development of research on teachers as designers, on the documentational activity of teachers, and so on. The third point I will comment more briefly is implementation. In all the projects I have been involved in, there were quantified goals in terms of dissemination, and rather ambitious quantified goals most often. So this project faced the upscaling challenge, which is a very difficult challenge. Specific strategies were used, developed, and what I observe is the predominance of the cascade model type, relying on the training of facilitators in the first phase of the project, who take in charge the training and guidance of teachers in the second phase, and their guidance, for instance, especially when they have to use the resources produced in the project. In all these projects, models were developed for teacher professional development and for the training of facilitators. Generally, they combine out-of-job, in-job, and by-job training activities. And this is the case, for instance, for the Primas spiral model, which has been used in several projects. Another point here, very important, is efforts which have been systematically made in order to involve a diversity of actors, parents, community, industrials, education stakeholders, up to ministries of education in the MASDIF project. Beyond teacher, researcher, and teacher educators, we are our most familiar community to ensure impact. And quantified aims were always achieved and even exceeded, but real impact of practices was much more difficult to evaluate within the project time. And increasing theoretical and empirical resource with the current development of implementation research can be helpful there. So I conclude, there are evident resonances, I think, with the challenge met by the Platinum project on this three-dimension conceptualization, resource, implementation. However, this project regards primary and lower secondary education, and there are substantial differences with Platinum. So, even if they can be source of inspiration, they are far from providing immediate answer to your questions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And we now follow with a prepared response by Reinhard Hockmuth. And I hope Reinhard is there to carry on with this second block of the session.
It's an honor and pleasure to connect to your input. Against the background of Michelle's overview, I will touch on some of the characteristics of Platinum. In doing so, I will recall and further illuminate issues that Barbara has already pointed out in her introduction. In particular, I addressed the following issues in the next 10 minutes. Platinum has to deal with university mathematics and not with school mathematics, as Michelle pointed to also a few minutes ago. And in this respect too, there are some specific challenges that Platinum has had to and still has to face. The ecology of our institutions poses a special problem, and that free layer model allows us to address some of the central issues of our context. I conclude with a brief comment on perspectives. So, as we all know, university mathematics differs essentially from school mathematics. University mathematics is more abstract, of course. Mathematical practices, and this is an important point, regarding IBME are more rooted in mathematics as a scientific discipline and less in the directly subjectively experienced life world. Proof plays an important role, and often mathematics is taught to a large extent as a service for other major subjects. And the demands on student autonomy are rather high in general. Challenges. One might wonder whether central features of IBME that have been highlighted as goals for school mathematics have historically, actually, or at least ideally, been taken for granted at university. To recall a few features from the IBM school projects, the teacher fosters and values students' reasoning. What students do: pose questions, engage, explore, explain, extend, evaluate, collaborate. The type of questions or problems students solve are open. Multiple solution strategies apply, experienced as scientifically relevant. I have to say that this is largely how I experienced my mathematics, physics, and psychology studies a lot, approximately 40 years ago. However, these degree programs no longer exist in this form. So IBME projects on the university level reflect to some extent that this ideal does not exist any longer. I don't know exactly. And a teaching culture in mathematics has developed in our countries, which does not appear optimal, as we all know, but which represents a functional compromise in view of interests, for example, from the point of view of the professors, lecturers, teaching versus research, and boundary conditions. For example, we have courses with many hundreds of students, and this compromise shows great stability. So depending on our local situations, we have developed tasks or teaching units that cover a spectrum from questioning, developing, to researching, discovering, teaching, always with interesting and conceptually oriented tasks. Our locally different ways of doing things reflect in particular our different local circumstances. The platinum partners and their institutional conditions, the qualification of the partners and students, the study programs, the objectives, curricula, and teaching learning environments are rather different. It was therefore not a platinum objective to base our cooperation on a common definition of IBME that is as precise as possible. Instead, we followed a general IBME orientation framework and differentiated it quasi-inwardly with regard to central dimensions. And the aim is then to locate the partner activities in this model, and on this basis to reflect on the transfer of tasks that is assessed as an IBME task in one place, maybe a common task in another place. The challenges regarding IBME for mathematics and the respective institutional specificity of activities and conditions are properly addressed by the three-layer model. Barbara introduced the student learning in the first level. The student learning and the concrete teaching are always in the center of IBME, of course. The IBME teaching requires distancing oneself from how it is always taught. So the second level represents the field where this process of distancing could take place. It highlights the importance of communication, and it highlights the importance of a local group supporting the activities. And the third layer reflect and support the activities against educational knowledge and research. It clarifies aims. It helps to reflect assessment issues, which are rather important as Michel mentioned, and looking for optimization. Their model allows to represent the whole of the institutionalization of communities of inquiry and the platinum community of inquiry in university mathematics education. It allows to address epistemological obstacles in the sense of Bachelor on all levels, which have become also social obstacles historically. Regarding the mathematics itself, for example, the question, why should one learn something about Hilbert spaces? Which problems are solved or addressed by Hilbert spaces? And also regarding the institutional dependence of knowledge and teaching, and regarding the institutional and societal dependence of activities, their reflection, and regarding resistances against IBME. The perspectives. I guess the collaboration between mathematicians, engineers, and others, and mathematical educators, and the local communities of inquirers and the platinum community of inquirers as a whole is a core success of platinum. And it also works because we are all more or less, or mostly more, nice people who communicate to each other and appreciate. The mathematics educators appreciate the mathematicians, and the mathematicians appreciate the mathematics education. I guess this is rather important, of course, as always in life, to have nice people around. And I would like to mention in the end that the key aspects of the Platinum's success to support IBME for a better understanding of crucial mathematical concepts by students will be dealt with in detail in the Platinum book. So some PR in the end, and many thanks for your attention, and many thanks again to Michel's input.
Thank you, Reinhard, and thank you again, Michel. We will now take another short break, and we will come back together at 5 minutes to the hour. And then we will have 15 minutes of questions to Reinhard and Michel. Please use the Padlet to pose your questions, and then they will, I will try to communicate those to Reinhard and Michel. So thank you again, Michel. Thank you, Reinhard, and we hope you will join us at 5 minutes to the hour. Welcome back to the Platinum webinar. And we now have 15 minutes of questions and answers posed to Michel Artigue and Reinhard Hochmuth. Before we move on to a consideration of inquiry tasks. Michel, I think I should give you the word first of all, in case there is anything that you want to say, particularly that has been provoked by anything that Reinhard has said in his reaction. Is there anything that you would like to?
Yes, I think that what Reinhard said about it is not necessary to have a fixed common definition of IBME. I agree with that. We have to know about our similarities and differences in approaches, but we don't need to have. We have also to be sure that we agree of some common, very important values. But the way you move the hierarchies of priorities we give, how we transform this into learning trajectories, into teaching units, I think we cannot uniform. We would lose a lot trying to make things more uniform. The second point I would like to add is the fact that in Platinum, the importance given to collectives and to community and to small group. I think this is absolutely essential and very promising, because you cannot what I have seen moving from communities, even a small community growing slowly, perhaps not so fast as often people engage to do in European projects, because it is a way of obtaining funding too. I think it's very important to be reasonable in the way you go and how you organize communities and the continuity of communities after the end of the project, which is absolutely essential if we want to achieve something sustainable.
Thank you, Michelle. And I want to stay with you with a question that has come in, which really looks at the other side of the issue. So I read the question. We heard a lot about the, and in brackets, cultural differences and context that have to be taken into account when creating IBL tasks. Mm-hmm. With your long history and experience, what should be avoided if you are someone wishing to or just about to embark on an IBL journey? So it's the other side. What should be avoided?
What should be avoided? I think that if I was new to IBL, each of us live in some context, in some culture, and we have to cope with, we will be influenced by this culture. And I think that we have to recreate IBL inside your culture, within your community. So what I would not, a danger would be to try to adopt things and very strictly, and not thinking that even if we have given resources, we are still designers of these resources, and that design continues in use. And for me, this is very important. To help this work, this common work, this collaborative work, to adapt things and to make things compatible with your condition and constraints, with your culture, while maintaining the epistemic essence of and the values of what you want to do. But you need a lot of flexibility.
Thank you. Reinhard, would you like to add anything or compliment?
First, I agree with Michelle, and I would like to add two things. One is sometimes in more pedagogical contexts, the mathematics, there's a loss of mathematics in the end. It's not enough to communicate and to discuss. It's necessary to discuss about mathematics and about substantial mathematics. And I guess this it's to avoid, only to focus on discussion because of discussion is one point. And another point, it's a little bit more critical in the sense of how to reach this goal is we have to change and have to touch the assessment. Mm-hmm. Because our students, and this is understandable, in the end they focus, they want to get in the end a good grade. Mm-hmm. And if the assessment more or less focus on calculations of something, then they spend a lot of time to be perfect in these things. And and I guess also from a mathematical point of view, calculations is important, of course, but it is not in the core of mathematics. It's not the mathematics at the university to calculate something.
Yeah, I agree totally with you that assessment is a key issue. And this was the reason why the project Assist Me was launched after the first project, because in the first project, it was clearly, it was made evident that teachers were in a double band. That you promote them to do IBL things, and their students were assessed in a totally different way, on very restricted way. And so we need to move assessment, not radically move assessment, but we have to move assessment and to give space for what is developed through IBL. Yeah, sure. If not, we cannot succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And now I have a question that's first directed to Reinhard, and it's particularly about the Platinum Project, but I think Michelle might have something to say as well, because I think it probably applies to all European projects. And it's how is the locality taken into account in Platinum? And my understanding of that is that Platinum is a collaboration, a community with people working in many different countries. How do you take locality of different teams, communities into account? So that's Reinhard.
Yeah, first of all, we have some kind of general framework where differences in the locality have their place. So on a theoretical level, somehow there is we have no problem with locality and with differences. What we okay, one of the most important issues we discussed on our meetings, as our meetings were possible, was always exchange about our local conditions and about the development of our local communities of inquiry. This was very interesting. It was very interesting to learn something about Loughborough. It was very interesting to hear things about ACTA, which were besides the official somehow. It was interesting to learn from the people in the Ukraine what they do, what is their job, how they work, and so on. So so each locality has its place within the project and is appreciated. In this and at the same how to say, at the same moment we have common goals and shared values. The common goal is that our students we have to teach in a way that our students learn better and deeper mathematics.
Yeah.
So we can exchange about mathematics and about the tasks. So
can I ask a question to Renat?
Yes, carry on.
Linked to the locality is not the same thing, is about the first dimension of locality I evoked. Because in the presentation you spoke about task and about teaching units. Task and teaching units are something different in terms of size. And so how is, do you think that the difficulties I have mentioned of designing isolated tasks that people can pick up, but without changing substantially their fundamental practices, would say, as we can observe some in other project teacher having 3-4 rounds of inquiry-based activity in a year, and the rest of the year is something more traditional. Do you think that it could be an obstacle for you too, or not? Or the conditions, the community work, the work you have organized, the work in, and the fact that you have, we do not want to prepare hundreds of teachers at the same time for implementing IBL, makes that there is not such a problem.
I would answer to communicate the task. Only the task is not enough to say why and in which way it is implemented and why it is an IBME task in the locality. This has to be also communicated. For example, the task with this series, that is an convergence series, and how is the convergence in L2 or in LP. This would be in the university system in Germany in an analysis course a normal task, and I guess also in France. But this says nothing about the task at another place. But I guess this applies every time, that we have to see the context of the task, the epistemological context of the task, and we have to learn about this. And so I can also learn something about applying this task at another place when I know something about the context. If I know nothing about the context, I see a task which is for example, this task is a more traditional task. So I can learn about tasks on different levels when I know more about the context.
Thank you both. I'm conscious of the time moving on. And so a very quick question. Since you raised the point, Reinhard, I think I pose it to you. You have about 45 seconds to answer the question. You talked about university mathematics is not just or not at all calculations. And the question is, what if you teach engineering students? They need more calculations, don't they?
But I also need to understand why to calculate in one way. And when I take a look on the application of mathematics in their major, then they have to understand the concepts. Otherwise, they can't understand why a certain mathematical concept is applicable and useful in their context. So they have to calculate, that's true, but that's not enough.
Thank you very much, Reinhard. And I will thank both you and Michelle very much for your contribution throughout this session. I don't think we're finished with you yet.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. You're the ones who've done the work. We now move on to another quick fire session where members of the Platinum Project will present different inquiry tasks. There will be an opportunity to ask questions afterwards, but no break. The presenters will be in the following order: André Heck, University of Amsterdam; Antonio Diaz-Cano, Complutense University of Madrid; Stephanie Thomas, Loughborough University; Svetlana Rogovchenko, University of Agda; Oksana Glushak from Boris Grinchenko, Kiev University. Andrei, you start.
Yes. I kick off with the presentation of an inquiry-based task developed at the University of Amsterdam, and it's about computing a numerical derivative. But as we understand now, you need to know some context about this task, and so I will first give some background information. The task that you will see is part of a basic mathematics module for first-year students in biomedical sciences developed within the Platinum Project. This was a brand new course that started in 2018 at the start of the Platinum Project for 150 freshmen. It offered the lecturers actually opportunities to start from scratch and to design a learning trajectory that they wanted, and to explore inquiry-based tasks, including the task of this presentation. And so about the learning trajectory, you have to know what is our mathematical content, and that's an introduction to the students into systems biology, which means that students study processes of change in the form of dynamical systems. And the task that you will see originated from examples of growth models to be addressed in the module. For example, in exponential growth, the growth factor is usually in textbooks estimated by plotting the logarithm of measured data against time, followed by linear regression. So it assumes that you know what is the exact solution in analytical form. But the more useful alternative is to compute the numerical derivative of a quantity from measured data and to plot it against the given quantity. In the example shown of exponential growth, your computed data then lay near a straight line through the origin with slope equal to the growth factor. This second approach motivates students to think about computing a numerical derivative of a mathematical function when not a formula is given, but only function values are provided. Now, we considered that an open student inquiry could be possible, at least in the Netherlands, because current students are familiar with the concept of difference quotient as an approximation of a derivative at a point. And so we created a task where students are invited to invent numerical differentiation methods. And the lecturers can support the student inquiry by imagined hypothesized feedback based on expectations. And we use this task in reality in a lecture. We did this in 20 minutes, the final 20 minutes of a 2-hour lecture. And in a subsequent tutorial, we let students implement their invented methods in R, in a mathematical programming language. So let me reveal the task. It's a short, concrete task. Students are invited to work in small teams, the neighbors in the lecture room, to come up with at least 2 methods for computing a numerical derivative and to compare the outcomes. In the lecture setting, about 10 minutes was spent on students finding methods and 10 minutes for discussing these invented methods. And this task is an example of a structured inquiry. The lecturer sets the task and provides the resources, in this case, a table with values, explanation how it was created, and an exact value for the derivative at a given time. But there is no unique correct outcome actually. All depends on the students' ideas and methods that they invent. An important aspect is that several standard numerical differentiation methods, as shown on this slide, seem within reach of students on the basis of their mathematical pre-knowledge. And the data are also rich enough for several of these numerical methods. The second aspect that I would like to point at is that the students can explore the quality of their invented methods by the lecturer's criterion given by the value close to 1, or they can use computer implementations of their methods to explore further effects like effects of noise, effects of the size of the time step, etc. Now let me finish with some experiences gained in the lecture setting. as soon as you present the task and say that it's going to be an inquiry-oriented task, 25% of the students disengaged immediately. To catch an early train, to inspect their smartphone, or to leave a Zoom meeting even before the breakout rooms were realized. But I think you can expect such behavior in a request for inquiry on demand. And I see that my time is up. So the final words is I refer to the case study in the Platinum book in which the design of the basic mathematics module for biomedical freshmen will be discussed in more detail and with more examples of inquiry-based tasks. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. And we pass immediately to Antonio.
Thank you to the organizers, and good afternoon to all the participants in the webinar. I'm going to present an example of one of the inquiry-based mathematics tasks carried out by the Spanish team. Here is a list of those that have been carried out in different areas, such as algebra, geometry, numerical analysis, or calculus. I think all of them have a great interest, but I have chosen this one on matrix factorization because it is related to linear algebra as well as matrix computations, and it has been carried out by two professors of our team, Professor Infante and myself. The motivation for this is to pose the motivation to pose this task was the difficulty of students to handle matrix factorizations and use them appropriately to solve problems in an efficient way, problems such as a system of equations. The task was carried out with second-year students of the degrees in mathematics, mathematics and statistics, and mathematical engineering. The subject was numerical methods, which is 6 ECTs, or what is the same 4 hours per week during a semester. The objectives of this activity were for students to learn to work efficiently with matrices, use matrix factorization to solve problems, and also be able to implement algorithms to factor matrices. On another plane, they were also objectives to promote collaborative work between students, autonomous study, and the ability to pose questions and conjectures. The students were divided into working groups of 4 people, and they were given worksheets with the tasks formulated as a partially open-ended problem. Here, you can see a part of the worksheet where the student had to do certain manipulation with a given matrix, applying Gauss method, and from there, they had to conjecture a result for the factorization of the given matrix as a product of a lower triangular matrix with the multipliers of the Gauss method and an upper triangular one. This was the first part of the activity. After that, another matrix is chosen as a result of exchanging the rows of the previous one, and the calculation are reproduced, since that the original matrix is not obtained as in the previous product, which leads the students to revise their guess. Finally, in the third part, students start from the second matrix and repeat the calculation, but storing the multipliers now in the right place. In this way, the product of the lower triangular matrix that's stored by the upper triangular matrix is a permutation of the starting one, which leads the students to guess a new result. In short, the students have to perform a series of tasks that test their knowledge and ability to manipulate matrices. In addition, the proposed task includes questions in which students are encouraged to conjecture results, confirm or refuse them with new examples, and adjust their conjectures in view of the conclusions thus obtained. This is inquiry-based learning. Once the task was finished, a discussion was organized. First, A representative from each group communicated to the other groups the given answer to each of the 3 questions of the worksheet, so that all students would be mindful of the guesswork of all their peers. Next, through a debate led by the teacher, the groups assessed, assumed, or criticized the responses and opinions of the other groups. To this end, the teacher encouraged the members of each group to explain their arguments. Often these were reformulated, taking into consideration the answers given by the rest of the groups. Right after finishing the discussion, the students fill out a questionnaire to evaluate the experience. I must say that the experience was highly appreciated by the students, around 8.4/10. And finally, a second questionnaire was given to students after finishing the topic of matrix factorization 1 week later. The results of both surveys show quite clearly the usefulness of the activity for a better approach to matrix factorization. The materials collected in this experience were the worksheets and surveys filled out by the students and the video of the discussion session. And that's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Antonio. And we move straight on to Stephanie.
Hello,
Hiya, Stephanie, we can hear you.
you can see me?
Yes.
Okay. Let's make sure this works. Yes, so I'm presenting an example from Loughborough University, and this is on a set of complex number tasks that was used in a mathematics foundation course in a foundation year. And the foundation year in the UK can take different forms. So I'm talking at our university of an additional but integrated year that students take. So that foundation students take a 4-year degree course, and then after the first year, which is called the foundation year, they join the usual 3-year degree course in science or engineering. And for this particular implementation of an IBL task, I had 160 plus students. So the tasks that I'm presenting were developed in collaboration with 4 former foundation students. So I have to make this really clear. I'm talking about 2 sets of students. So I have got the students in the foundation year who would be working with the tasks and learn about complex numbers for the first time. And I have 4 former foundation students who I will call student partners who worked with us to develop the tasks. So we worked as a team, and apart from myself and the 4 former students, there were 2 more lecturers involved who did not teach on the foundation course. These were mathematics educators interested in IBL, teaching and learning. The student partners had the responsibility to produce the computer files and decide what the tasks would look like. So they used the software Autograph to create computer files and discuss their ideas with us. Of course, they did not develop the whole concept of the task by themselves. They kept discussing with us, but ultimately they had the responsibility for the computer files. They had to work in the real setting later on. We, the lecturers, wrote the instruction sheets that went with the computer files and gave the instructions to the foundation students to progress through the tasks. The tasks were used in a tutorial setting as part of normal teaching schedule. And it was a 50-minute session. So the aim is to explore complex numbers in a dynamic environment in order to connect the algebraic manipulations with geometric insights. There were 6 tasks on addition, subtraction of complex numbers, multiplication, a task on complex conjugates, squaring, and cubing complex numbers. You can imagine the task similar set out in this before and after screenshot of task 4, which is on the complex conjugate. One reason to choose task 4 was that it had the shortest instruction sheet to put on the one slide, which I only have like 1 minute to present. So the task here was that the students could see 3 complex numbers labeled Z1, Z2, and Z. And they were given that one of the complex numbers is Z1 at -2 plus J. So that is the purple colored line. What is the complex conjugate of Z1? Select Z2, which is the red line, and move it to the position of the complex conjugate of Z1. Notice what's happening to Z, which of course is on the right-hand side. What is the relationship between these 3 complex numbers? Verify by hand, and now move Z1 and explore what is happening. In bold, I have highlighted what I consider to be the inquiry aspects of the task. Of course, that was not shown to students on the instruction sheet. So what did we find? Well, sorry, I didn't press soon enough. Our experience was twofold. Often students did not manage to complete all 6 tasks. Students could not discover the geometric relationship. They found the instructions too long, too wordy. They asked if this would be tested in the exam, and when the answer was no, they disregarded the tutorial work to some extent. So we know that from research that can happen. Tasks were adapted after the first use, but they had very little overall difference in outcome. On the other hand, the student partners who developed the tasks reported that they learned a lot about the mathematics of complex numbers, about designing tasks, about thinking around the mathematics, and needing to know the mathematics more deeply and more conceptually in order to develop the tasks. So our challenge remains how to adapt the tasks if we want all students to experience what the 4 student partners had, and that challenge is with me to this day. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, and well done for keeping time. We move on to Svetlana.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And I'm presenting the task developed at the University of Agder. The task represents a part of one of the teaching and assessment modules in mathematics course for graduate engineering students. And the main goal of this module is developing and improving student skills in mathematical analysis in general and for specific problems. While working on this module, the students should understand the concept of existence and uniqueness theorem for the initial value problems through the application to a practical problem. In this module, we used the following tools: the theoretical results about solutions to the initial value problems, computer algebra systems. The course was Maple computer algebra system supported, but it was not limited to it. So students could use also other systems like MATLAB or anything else, and also the practical experiment. Oh, sorry. So how it was organized. The class of about 40 students was split into groups of 3-5 students, and they were given a home assignment for 1 week, during which they were supposed to organize discussions of solutions, conduct a small experiment, and make a video about it. Then write individual reports with analysis of their findings. And finally, they were supposed to present the solutions and the results of their analysis in class and answer the questions from other participants. The task that was given is a famous the leaking bucket problem. And in this problem, we have a cylindrical bucket with a hole in the bottom, which is plugged. So the the bucket has a specific cross-sectional area, and as well as the hole. So the bucket is filled with water to the height H0, and the clock is started as the plug is removed and the water begins to leak out of the bucket. The students were supposed to construct a differential equation model to determine the height h of t of water with respect to time. And then after solving the equation, they were asked the following questions. So first, of course, they had to set the problems and explain how they did it. Then they had to set the initial value problem and explain the meaning of this problem with the given values for the initial time and initial height. And then they have to realize that the solution to this initial problem after some time stops being a realistic description of the height. And they were supposed to explain what physical event occurs at this moment. In order to find the realistic continuous solution to this problem, they had to set another initial value problem. So that was also the task for the students during this module, and investigate the properties of the solution. So the questions were asked about the continuity and continuous differentiability of the solutions. They were supposed to make the connection to the existence and uniqueness theorem, and discuss the properties of the solution in terms of the existence of multiple solutions, and in terms of contradiction or non-contradiction to the existence and uniqueness theorem. So the opportunities for inquiry were given in the modeling process itself, in identifying the various parameters of the problem and discovering the existence of multiple solutions to the initial value problem, relating the theorem to the solution, finding the realistic solution, and analyzing the graphs of different solutions. What we actually concluded from the students' experiences is that the task was the obligatory assessed piece of the coursework, so the students were supposed to participate, and they did. The students' collaborative work in groups promotes inquiry. Students' engagement with mathematical theory is high when they see how it can be applied in practice. And the small experiment was motivating, so students commented that it was the funniest part of the task. But on the other hand, the use of computer algebra system was not very efficient in terms of mathematical analysis, rather illustrative. And in the beginning, the students just tried to draw the graphs by hand. So thank you very much for attention, and that was all.
Thank you, Svetlana. And our final presenter in this section is Oksana. Over to you, Oksana.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We are working on the Platinum task. We participant of a project from Boris Grinchenko Kiev University found out in particular how the ABL strategy improves students' conceptual understanding of mathematics and how it affects the formation of their conceptual knowledge. For this paper, for 2 academic years, this strategy was tested in the teaching of the discipline mathematical analysis, similar to calculus, for first-year students of mathematics, teacher Maria Astafyeva. An appropriate description of our practice with achievements, difficulties, and problems is provided for publication in the collective book of the project participant. Today, we offer you an example of a task for open inquiry. The discipline is taught to freshmen. So, in the process of implementing a research-oriented approach, the learning is dominated by structure and manager inquiry. However, gradually the teacher seeks to raise the level of freshman research activity and stimulate students' own initiative, independent problem statement, proposing alternative solution that is use open inquiry. Thus, in May 2020, at the end of studying the topic numerical series, the teacher invited freshmen to put on the forum a learning system, mathematical, is focused on research questions or problems on the topic and give answer to them. Students actively participate in the discussion. 5 of the 8 students asked conceptual questions. 6 of the 8 students took part in the discussion. Here is the example of one of these questions and the discussion of students caused by it. The students offered to find out how significant is one of the Leibniz criterion condition of an alternative series convergence. The slide shows the students' answer to the formulated question. The students give an example of a series where the term of the series tend to 0, but do not decrease, and prove that this series is divergent. Thus, he substantiates his conclusion that condition of decrease the sequence of series terms is significant. Another student argues for this importance of this decreasing condition by his example, different from the previous. His justification, which is not given here, is also complete and correct. And on this slide, we see that the student expands the initiated research. He wonders whether the conditional of decreasing models of its term is necessary for conversion of an alternative series. He gives an example of a convergent alternative series, the term of which do not form a descending sequence, from which he concludes that this condition is not necessary. However, there is a weak point in the justification of the previous student. The conclusion that the sequence of terms of this series is not monotonic. He did wrong on the basis of incomplete induction. This mistake was noticed and corrected by the next students, whose reasoning we have on this slide. For her arguments, the students successfully used a graphic image. The goal set by the teacher was achieved. Most students, 75% of the group, joined the research activities and demonstrate the ability to act independently as mathematicians. Students formulate questions and answer questions without any help from the teacher. It is important to note that the discussion continued after the student passed the exam. It even intensified after the exam. This indicates, in particular, their persistent interest, intrinsic motivation, and comfort in learning. By the way, the teacher did not evaluate this task, only that the evaluation was not only incentive of the student. The incentive should be intrinsic motivation. The above fragment shows that the students who participate in the discussion have ability to independently formulate a research problem and the willingness to work on its solution, the ability to find the right idea to solve the problem, understanding what is sufficient, necessary, and essential conditional, understanding method of mathematical proof, internal needs to full evidence, ability to make strict logical reasoning, critically evaluate provided arguments, ability to apply previous experience and knowledge to solve a new problem. Ability to establish a connection between different interpretation of mathematical concept and fact, in particular to use a graphic image for illustration and argumentation. That's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Oksana. And now I invite Andrea, Antonio, Stephanie, Svetlana, and Oksana to have their cameras on and their microphones ready. We have some time for questions and answers up until 5 minutes to the hour. I'm going to ask you, this is a question for all of you, to answer briefly. And the question, it reads exactly as follows. Honestly, would you have done what you did if you had not been in the Platinum Project? I want to add to that, and are you glad you did it? So we'll go down the list. Quick answers. Andre.
The answer is that we had an opportunity to start from scratch. So I designed the learning trajectory that I would have liked if I was a biomedical student. And so I think that the choice of doing it in an IBME, an inquiry-based mode, was a personal choice as well.
Thank you.
So I'm glad.
Okay, great. Antonio.
Yes, well, probably if I were not in the Platinum Project, I didn't do this experience, but I am really glad because I could see my students really involved, working and asking questions, and for them, I think it was a good experience. Also, the collaboration between the student was something surprising for me in a good manner, I say.
Thank you, Antonio. Stephanie.
Well, I don't know. I mean, our project at Loughborough involved students, and I would say that I very much wanted to see what the students would come up with. So if it hadn't been for the students being part of the team developing the computer files, I might not have had enough motivation to cover it all the way through and just on my own. I think I needed the team.
Great, thank you. And were you glad to do it?
Yeah, definitely.
Good. Svetlana?
Yeah, I think I would do it anyway because it all started before Platinum. It was started with Masaryk, I think. Thank you, Simon. And but I'm definitely very lucky to participate in Platinum because we have a wonderful team and we can discuss a lot of things, and I learned a lot. So yeah, I'm very glad.
Thank you, Svetlana. Oksana.
Thank you for this interesting question. I agree with my colleagues. We participants from Boris Grynchenko University is very glad to take part in Platinum Project, and we love our practice and provide inquiry technology in our experience.
Thank you. Right, now I go to a question. Actually, it's got two parts. The question is directed to Andre, who I'm going to ask to answer both parts, and then I'm going to quick fire through the other people who presenters for all to get their own answer to the second part. So the two parts are, Andre, how was the task on numerical derivatives delivered, presented to the students, which is just for you, and then for you and everyone, were the students asked to present their results, and did they? So when you get to the end of the task, did the students present tasks to the rest of the class? Andre.
Okay. Well, as I said, I used this task in a lecture, and that was a challenge for me because I had never done such an open inquiry in a lecture room, spending 20 minutes of my lectures on an activity where I would not know what would be the outcome. So the students were actually presented almost the slide that you saw, the table with the data of the function points and the question, the challenge that I gave them to come up with ideas. And then I just was walking around in the lecture room, seeing what was happening, not so much in discussion with students. And the students presented actually the outcome, because the last 10 minutes, I was just asking what answers they had found, what the numerical derivatives they had found and how they had done it. So they explained in class how they had done it, and some come with the same ideas and others with other ideas. And I, in the end, closed the meeting with, well, what other methods you could still use, but were not mentioned. And so that's how we presented it and how we used actually the feedback from the students about what they thought that would be wise.
If I can just keep you there for a moment, Andre, how do you see that student presentation of their results contributing to the whole package of the inquiry process?
We haven't built that in deliberately in the module, because the short module of 7 weeks, the students have a lot of writings to do in their other courses that are at the same time. In the tutorial session, they implement their method. So you could say their programs are indeed the deliverables, or they write down their documents, and if it works or not, and if they have some mistakes still in their thinking about the methods that they want to implement.
Thank you.
We did not have meetings with students presenting the work to each other.
Okay, thank you. And now very quickly, that second question to the other presenters, were students asked to present their results, and did they? So Antonio.
Well, the students were given a worksheet, and they have to write their answer in the worksheet, and then after finish the task, there were a discussion, and they have also to present their conclusion to the other groups of the class. So I think both presentation, writing and speaking were interesting for them.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Well, similarly to Antonio's group, my groups had to, well, they worked in pairs and had to write down the findings on a prepared worksheet. But they didn't present it to each other in class. We collected these for feedback for ourselves, etc. And I interacted with students in the tutorial. But if I had incorporated that with 160 students, I would have had well, at least 50 plus presentations, which I have to date not really thought about how to do that.
Thank you. Svetlana?
For me, it was actually the teaching and assessment module. So that means that it contributed to the total grade. So students had to do it and had to present in class, but don't forget that my course consisted of only 40 students. So for me, it was possible to do that.
Thank you. And finally, Oksana.
I was observer in Maria Stafieva classes, and I saw that she improves this task for learning system. And I know that Maria was kindly stuff to the student, and it is very important to know that student understand another after the learning theme, and it is very important task for student and understanding teaching what the student know.
Thank you, Oksana. Now another quick question for all of you, and while Oksana's still got her alive on my screen, we'll start with her this time. And I think this is another one that should start honestly, and you'll I think you'll relate to the question that's being asked. How much time did you spend on developing the tasks? How much time did you spend on developing tasks? Oksana?
Maria Astafyeva developed this task, and I know that a lot of time because she must to understand what student know.
Okay, so let me ask you then a slightly different question. Does it put you off when you realize how much time has to be spent? Are you discouraged to develop inquiry tasks if you know it takes a long time to develop them?
I think it's an inquiry task, yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's Svetlana.
I don't know, Simon. I really cannot answer that question because it takes ages. I think you just go from one to another and try to improve it every time you find something not working. So I don't know. It's really just a part of your life in a way.
Very, very good. Stephanie?
I have no idea how long it took, but what I can say is, I said before, I probably wouldn't have done it if I hadn't had the students, because those 4 students who were working with the autograph file and came up with ideas, in some sense, I sort of waited for them. So that saved me time because I didn't really decide what it should be until the students came up with ideas and I would support them. If I look at the time that we spent as a team, we regularly met for like 2-3 hours in an afternoon. The students worked on it for 2-3 hours every week, maybe longer, 6 hours. I don't know. It's probably, those 6 tasks probably came about, no, not even all 6. I think half of them probably came about from like a whole week's work.
Okay, great.
Maybe something like that.
Yeah, thank you.
I like to give it a time thing.
Yeah, I think that's what's being asked for.
Yeah.
Antonio?
Yes, on the one hand, it was 1 hour for students to complete the tasks, and then a half an hour of discussion. But for me, I think it was around 8 to 10 hours maybe of work, but it was a work shared with another professor. So it's a lot of time, but I hope to benefit from this several times in several courses, I hope.
Okay, thank you very much. And Andre, you have 20 seconds.
Oh, well, for this task presented, it was 1 day, but for the whole module of 7 weeks, I know that our student lecturer had 15 days employment. I think the other lecturers, 2 of them, spent probably 25 days on the whole course designing it. And then we were lucky that we could build on earlier material for life science students. It's a lot of work.
Could I add something? No, it's like things snowball once the first ideas come along.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
you know, so we certainly found that. That's why I said it took like the whole week for the first sort of half of the task, but maybe then it accelerated a bit when you sort of got the idea of what you wanted to do.
Get some momentum, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Andre, Antonio, Stephanie, Svetlana, Oksana, thank you for your presentations of tasks, for stimulating discussion afterwards. There are some more questions to think about, which you will be able to look at later. But now it is my pleasure to hand over to my colleague, Thomas Yesterland, who will chair the panel session. Thomas is the director of Masaryk, which is the Center for Teaching in innovation and coordination of mathematics teaching at the University of Agder. Thomas, over to you, and you will introduce your panel.
Thank you very much, Simon. It's always good to follow after you. So I took over Masaryk after Simon in July. Good afternoon, everyone. We have 25 minutes, maybe 24 now, to have a panel and discuss inquiry-based teaching and learning. And let me start with introducing the panelists. And if you could just please turn on your camera. So Michelle Artigue, from who Simon so kindly introduced earlier, thank you for your keynote. Are you with us, Michelle?
Yes.
Thank you. There was too many views, so I tried to find you. There you are. There you are. Nice to see you. Welcome. You have a lot of experience in maths education, as we heard earlier, and we look forward to your answers to these questions. Natasha Brouwer from University of Amsterdam, are you with us?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to see you. Please. And you are working on science education. So welcome to the panelists.
Thank you.
Josef Rebanda from Brno University of Technology. Hello, how are you?
Hello, good afternoon or evening to everyone.
Good to see you, Josef. And you also work both in mathematics, but also mathematics and teaching. Thank you. Yes. And then we have Lucas Maskilo from Masaryk University, who previously have spoken to us. Are you still with us, Lucas?
It's funny. Your pronunciation of Czech names really funny.
Sorry for that one. It's
we are used to that.
Lucas Masilko?
Yeah, that's right.
Masilko. Okay, thank you. And you have also an experience working with students with special needs. Good. So you have all seen the Padlet, and I see some of you in the audience have already added some questions, and others of you have even liked some questions. So we start on with the first questions. Let me see if I can move this now. Am I there? I'm allowed to. So the first questions we have for you is that university maths courses are quite often service courses. We all experience that. And that the students in these classes have very different background and interests. Maybe some of them wants really to get engaged with the mathematics and go for deep learning in mathematics, while others just want to pass the exam. So this certainly raises specific challenges. And the questions for the panelists, what are these? And that could be for the whole panel, but maybe how are they taking up in Platinum could be a most special. And I think I would go directly to you, Josef, if you could first address some of these issues and maybe think about how they are addressed in Platinum.
Yes, thank you for a good question. In my experience of teaching mathematics as a service subject to engineering students, the biggest challenge is a lack of motivation to learn mathematics. And it is really difficult to promote inquiry in learning mathematics if there is a lack of motivation in learning mathematics at all. So in Platinum, especially, we are discussing such challenges in our community of inquiry. So that's the term we heard about in the presentations today, is in the block 1 and also in the second block. And I think that engaging wider community is a good way of taking up serious challenges in general. And I think that it corresponds to human nature.
So to have this inquiry of, so you are several colleagues together who discussing these issues and try to address them.
Yes, and not only that, but I also mean the global platinum community of inquiry with all the partners involved. So it's possible to discuss, and that is the big advantage we have.
Do you have students involved in these discussions? Are the students part of those discussions?
Well, not at my institution, but as we have heard, for example, from Stefani in the previous part, there are some partners who can do this or who have space for this.
Thank you. Michelle, you have a lot of experience with not within platinum, but I guess you have experienced the same challenges.
I am the author of the question, so
okay,
I raise the question to have answer from the others, not to answer it.
but do you have some answer for what type of challenges you were thinking?
Yeah, sure. That I see challenges not only in terms of motivation and also, but in the fact that these courses generally mix a lot of students with different backgrounds, and finding inquiry-based tasks that are motivating for all these different students is not so easy, I think. And there are some research that try to address these issues, and I think that it is very important to try to address this issue of difference in background and to find tasks that can be interesting for many different students.
Thank you. So when the classes are mixed with engineering students, math students, physics students, etc. Natasha, have you experienced some of these different difficulties with students of different backgrounds and interests?
Yeah, there are certainly challenges to address this. I also think that there is often the matter of disinterest is not the matter of they don't motivate it, but it is the matter that they have knowledge gaps. So it is very important to assure that that students can breach their own knowledge gaps. And what we do at the University of Amsterdam, we have a special platform where students can learn, practice, and test their mathematical knowledge on their own pace. And this make them possible to get the level so that they can participate in more challenging activities such as IBME tasks.
Yeah, thank you. Lucas, can I also address this question to you in this general way? Do you have experience?
I would add personal experience with students of one of our faculty at the university, the Faculty of Business and Administration. And these students have, in the first year of bachelor studies, they have a very rich and very large course of mathematics, where they are supposed to come through differential calculus and integrals and also matrices and a lot of topics. And they have different levels of knowledge from the high schools, from secondary schools. And it's really difficult for us as teachers to balance these different levels. So our approach is to offer them some voluntary course, Mathematics 0, in which we try to teach them the basics of university mathematics to ensure that they will understand the terms which are taught then in mathematics, the course, main course. And we have also a math learning support center for these students, where they can ask a mathematics teacher and in one-to-one session give some or receive some explanation of topics which they don't understand well. So this kind of service is in our university. I think that it helps us to get more balanced group of students. in the main course.
Thank you, to help this knowledge gap. Thank you. We need to move on. We have some questions and time is ticking. So maybe not all of you want to address this question, but you can please, if you just wave if you would like to address it. It can be argued that the main obstacles to implementing inquiry-based mathematics education lie outside the competence of regular teachers to make any substantive difference. For example, very large classes, very heterogeneous group of students, weakness in students, prior knowledge, and in service subjects, students lacking motivation to engage with mathematics. What can be done to address these issues? And maybe that was what you just answered to Lucas just recently, that the support center and also to help the weak students to fill their learning gap. Are there any of you, other of you who wants to comment on this question? Yes,
when I saw the expression very large classes, I was thinking about when I work with African colleagues, we have 80, 100 students in classrooms. This is not necessarily in all parts of the world reserved to university courses. And I think that surely a difference for the majority is the size of classes, nevertheless, and for inquiry-based learning in university. But I think that more and more we think that lectures are not only the unique form of teaching at university. And perhaps the COVID pandemic will help moving a bit the lines for that. And so we have spoken about tutorials, about a lot of activity, about projects. So these also have a place for developing inquiry-based activities that can be used. And if we look at lectures, we can think to the idea that we can develop, as was just mentioned a moment ago, more modest and short moments of inquiry spirit in the activity. But I remember also thinking about inquiry-based learning of my colleague Marc Legrand, who was developing this scientific debate with 100 students at university decades ago. So it is not impossible.
It is possible. Thank you. Let me see if I'm moving on here now, because this question, based on the previous talk, I'm not sure if that's an easy yes answer to this question, but I like the idea of using an inquiry-based task with students. However, designing such tasks is not an easy or quick. Do you have any suggestion of how to produce good task in a quick way? Is that a definitely no questions, or do you have any type of question which is easier to develop than others? Natasha, would you, yes, please?
Yeah, I wanted to react on it. I wanted to ask a question. Does it really matter how quick it is? We have heard the speakers before how very inspiring was it when they were designing inquiry-based tasks. We can ask ourselves, what is the goal of inquiry-based task? What does this with students? And we've seen at Oksana what kind of outcomes actually they could see at students. So maybe we should ask ourselves, what is the goal? What is the real goal? Why do we use inquiry-based tasks in mathematics courses? And well, I would say because then we can see how mathematicians really work, and we could get into deep understanding of one mathematics concept. And if we look from this perspective, then I don't think that something quick means anything here.
Thank you. Yeah, Yusuf, please.
Yes, thank you. I agree with what Natasha just said. So we perhaps could reformulate the question like how to start quickly with developing the IBME tasks. So for me personally, inquiry is closely related to asking questions. So one quick idea, or one idea how to start quickly, might be to try to reformulate the tasks. Like, for example, do this or find that or explain this into questions.
Yeah.
Like, is it possible to do this? Or how could we do that? Or what if something like this happened? I think that could be a quick start.
That's a very good.
Yeah.
Would you comment? Yeah, Michelle.
I can add that it is a strategy we have used in professional development for teachers regarding inquiry-based, adapting task, moving task, and this was really productive. And when we have a task, quite often you can imagine variations. So a task generates other tasks. So it is not only one task that you design, but a family of tasks that you can envisage.
Thank you. I move then on to the next question, because I think it's kind of related, because this is a good question, task to start in the lecture and start the student to get into the inquiry. But as we heard from the previous discussion with Michelle and with Reinhard, examination, the assessment is crucial. So it's well known that students are primarily oriented towards the actual examination requirements. How can assessment form look like that are suitable for medium and large courses and are in line with inquiry-based mathematics education goals? So these questions you posed, Josef, could you also give them on the exam?
Wow, that is a good question. And I agree that assessment of large cohorts is a big challenge. At least for me, it would be. So I can say I don't know how to assess conceptual understanding or students' inquiry if there are, for example, several hundreds of students and a limited time period, which always, what in my experience is the reality. I don't have unlimited time. But there are some ideas in Platinum that I think are worth to explore. We have some colleagues who deal with this, and we can use our imagination in terms of exam questions, but not only that, also in terms of new forms of assessment. And in this respect, my opinion is that well thought use of digital technology like internet and other could be helpful in this. But in general, I don't have the answer now.
Lucas, you would like to say something here?
Yes, I think that the flexibility is the key, that you offer students more methods of assessment, not only final written exam, where they are pressed by time, they need to recall all their knowledge in very short limited time and to put all together. This is very difficult for students who feel anxious about such a small time, and even if you give them more extra time, it doesn't help. So I think that, for example, some long-term methods of assessment, like long projects with in collaboration with teams, long-term papers, some preparation of presentation of something like so. These kind of assessment where students can prepare themselves and can, let's say, balance their time and research and so on. I think we should include this into assessment methods. So this flexibility can give is really valuable and helpful, not only for students with special needs, but for all of them.
So portfolio exam or home exam over a long time period. Do anyone of you in the panelists here have examples or have tried this or read about others who have done examination or the assessment in this way? Natasha, do you?
Well, I agree that that inquiry-based tasks are not suitable for traditional exams. But I would say that it is necessary to look at what is the goal, what was the intended learning outcome that for which we have used inquiry-based tasks to to reach. And then we need to assess that learning outcome. And this is probably never being able to solve inquiry-based tasks in 20 minutes.
No.
No, agree, yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to find good examples where you use portfolio assessment or
yeah, it could
in
be,
mathematics.
Yeah, and it is sure that at university we have introduced projects, student projects, group projects in presentations in many quarters. Not necessarily with the big courses, but this is becoming more common.
And especially when we have home exam during the COVID-19 time, it's maybe even more needed than ever. Thank you. Thank you for a very good discussion about this. This was a good one. I'm moving on again. I'm a lecturer in mathematics, and I like very much the idea of community of inquiry to develop mathematics teaching. However, I wonder, how can I pursue my colleagues to give up their valuable time for this? We are all pressed on time, even we in the panel here. How can you include your colleagues? Is there anyone who wants? Yes, Lucas, please.
I can start. I think Barbara said that in her presentation in the beginning. The best motivation is shared repertoire. That you and your colleague teach the same course, share the same problems, and then, of course, building the community and trying to restructuring your teaching units or tasks into inquiry-based ones. It's much more simple and not without persuading the other person.
Can it also be more fun?
Yeah, I fully agree with Lucas, and the fact that you do not have to convince all our colleagues, but a group of colleagues, and work together. And I think change the lens instead of thinking in terms of the time we lose, thinking in what we can gain with reasonable investment in this kind of task, because we are all dissatisfied with our teaching, with the students' engagement and knowledge. And we can see, as was shown a moment ago, that we can gain rather quickly some evidence that things can be moving when we use inquiry-based tasks. So perhaps it's not so difficult to convince not all colleagues, but a
start with
small group
someone
of colleagues at least.
Yeah, Natasha, please.
Yeah, I think that we have to do it on the spot where it happens. Where we have a large group of students, we also have teams of teachers, and I think it's our task and also our pleasure to talk about teaching and talk about inquiry-based tasks. So this is what we've done at the University of Amsterdam. The community was connected to the course, and there were teachers meeting every week or 2 weeks regularly to discuss and to also discuss how these tasks were accepted by students.
Thank you. We are getting the 1 minute sign hand. So Josef, please, a short comment, please, Josef.
Yes, okay. So I would come back to the students, because as a teacher, I give support to all students, but I cannot make learn those who don't want to. And I see similar phenomenon with my colleagues in teaching mathematics in higher education. So there are teachers who are motivated to explore new things, and there are those who prefer to maintain their status quo. And I, of course, can offer to share my ideas and experience, but I don't think that I can persuade anyone to explore new things, and I'm not sure I want to. And because of that, I'm in particular happy that we have this Platinum community, because that's the opportunity, that's the place, that's the community of inquiry where I can discuss with my colleagues who are, say, on the same wavelength.
Thank you. I
Thank
will
you
leave
all.
that as the last word for this panel. Thank you very much. I thought you had some very good inputs there to us. So let's thank the panelists with the reaction button and the applause, you know, and then we unfortunately have to move on to the next, to Yuri. And there are some questions on Padlet, but I guess those will be answered and found on the Platinum website afterwards. So Yuri, are you ready to take the word? Yuri?
Yuri is there, but muted.
I don't know who was muting me.
Oh, now you're unmuted. Yuri, over to you.
Okay, thank you. I wrote in the program that it will take just 1 minute to close this session. That was an honest lie. And that was the hook to start the inquiry why this webinar finishes with the odd timing, which is 18:21. So I would like to start, as I usually start, the messages to my colleagues in Platinum. Dear friends in Platinum, dear friends of Platinum, honorable guests, we came to the end of this webinar. We are delighted to have over 190 registered participants who joined us today to participate in the event and meet our team. Thank you all. During this webinar, I was looking occasionally at the number of participants who are online, and I noticed it oscillating between 100 and 130 something, which according to my feedback piece says that we had really a good workout. So it was a very, very intensive and good workout. I would like to start by thanking Tomasz Bukowski, Lukasz Masaryk, and their colleagues at Masaryk University in Brno, who made the perfect setting for the whole event. I appreciate very much the support of our text-to-speech, speech-to-text team, whom I do not know personally, but I hope I will meet in the future. They did a great job, even if it was very challenging. I express our gratitude to keynote speakers, Professor Michel Artigue and Barbara Jaworski. I also appreciate very much all contributions of today's presenters and panelists. Our special thanks go to Professors Simon Goodchild and Thomas Jesteland, our friends in Masaryk, the former founding director and the current one, who made sure everything ran so well. This Platinum event is finished now, but it doesn't really stop at this point. We are already thinking about organizing the new one, the next one. I know myself, I have enjoyed today enormously, and I hope you all have too. Thank you for your participation in this webinar. We look forward to meeting you again at another Platinum event. At this point, the recording will stop, and there will be availability of chat, and you can switch on your cameras and you can have your voice on and you can say anything you wish in the last minutes. Thank you all for being with us today. We really appreciate it.